The sound of the war drums has begun to echo throughout the mainstream media as the establishment argues that the only way to eliminate the Islamic State and defeat ISIS is to take out the government of Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. Thus, the battle cry for boots on the ground in Syria. And we knew this was coming. I mean, the United States government and the U.S. intelligence agencies, well, they've been planning this for a very long time.
And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq? He said, oh, sir. He says, it's worse than that. He said, he pulled up a piece of paper off his desk. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office that says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. I said, 7 countries in 5 years. I said, is that a classified memo? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. He was about to show it to me. He said, because I want to talk about it. This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
And that was General Wesley Clark talking about his experience back in the early days of the Bush administration. This was shortly after 9/11. And, you know, we've even got PNAC documents that go back even further that reveal that Syria has been a huge target on the U.S. hit list for some time. Now, remember, al-Qaeda did not have a presence in Iraq until after the U.S. invasion in 2003. Then the U.S. and its allies engineered the so-called Arab Spring. Civil wars erupted in Libya and Syria, and in walks the global powers to establish order out of chaos.
We came, we saw, he died.
That's right, and ISIS, which is a Frankenstein that was created by Western intelligence, well, they were sent in to overthrow Gaddafi in Libya, and now they are being used to overthrow Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So when you see these political pundits and politicians calling for boots on the ground in Syria, remember, they've been planning this for some time, and they've successfully destabilized the region. They've created absolute chaos. There's a tsunami of refugees that are fleeing the country right now, and they're flooding into Europe. And the ISIS terrorists are even allowed to export themselves through illegal immigration. It is an absolute orchestrated mess.
The United States should not delay in leading a global coalition to take out ISIS with overwhelming force. We need to intensify our efforts in the air and on the ground. While air power is essential, it cannot bring the results we seek. The United States, in conjunction with our NATO allies and more Arab partners, will need to increase our presence on the ground.
So there you go, Jeb Bush right on cue, acting like the true globalist puppet politician that he really is, calling for boots on the ground and a war in Syria. Mainstream media across the board, they're basically doing the same thing. They have the same mentality because the globalists, they have been waiting for this opportunity. And unfortunately, the terrorist attacks in Paris are giving them the perfect excuse to go in and start a war. Now, don't get me wrong. I want these radical Muslim extremists dead. I want ISIS to be totally destroyed and permanently wiped off the face of the earth. We're talking about that these guys are subhuman animals and they all need to be exterminated. So don't think I'm about to go tree hugging with Jane Fonda while our brave troops and soldiers go into war, because it's not about that. This is about knowing your enemy. Who funded ISIS? Who trained ISIS? Who's giving them money? And why were they let loose like a pack of rabid dogs to wreak havoc throughout the Middle East? These are the questions you should be asking yourself. And David Knight joins us now to try to help make sense of all this. I'm interested in your perspective on what do you think about all this talk about boots on the ground in Syria? Do you think it's a legitimate response to the Paris ISIS attacks, or do you think that this is simply a matter of the globalists waiting for this opportunity because they've been wanting to go into Syria for a very long time?
They've been working on this for a long time. That's why it's hard to make sense out of it, Darren, because we've been telling everybody where this is coming. We've been watching this develop over a number of years. We knew that they were trying to start a war in Syria. They had false flag sarin gas attack. They've tried to do everything they can. And of course, as Alex talked about earlier today, there are all these people in the military that said, we're not going to be al-Qaeda's air force. They want a no-fly zone. As Rand Paul pointed out, you're talking about shooting down Russian planes to do that. And Russian planes who were there by the invitation of the Syrian government. And we know going way back to Wesley Clark that this was on their list, their hit list of countries that they were doing. This is a deliberate plan. And we've talked about how they've been creating ISIS, how they've armed them, trained them. It's an open secret. And yet you have the mainstream media, especially Fox News and others, who are trying to pretend that this is all something that is external to us, something that just grew up organically and naturally there that we had nothing to do with, and we need to now go there and take it down. It's absolutely insane.
Well, and this is straight out of the CIA's playbook on how to take over a country.
Yeah.
You know, send in a bunch of bad guys to do Washington's dirty work. They rape and pillage the nation. They start a civil war, and then they go in there and establish order out of chaos.